The 2025 college fall football season is finally fully underway, which means there's no better time to bring back ESPN's Jordan Reid to talk draft with Neil and I. Jordan was at a couple games this weekend, saw some of these top quarterback prospects, but we take a run around the college football landscape, talk offense, defense, a little bit of everything in between, as well as answer what some of the philosophy questions are that teams think about when drafting these guys. Really fun all draft conversation here today on Scouting the League. Everybody, and welcome back to Scouting the League. We will get to Jordan Reid of ESPN shortly, but before we do, make sure you head over, like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you are listening and watching, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or that video portion over on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, give us a like. Most importantly, share this with a friend. If you love ball, you love the draft, you love everything about football, you probably have somebody else in your life that does as well. Shoot them this podcast, shoot them a video, let them know they need to be listening to us as well. And then head over, give us a follow on X. I am Rodrik David, former NFL scout, spent time in pro and college with the Atlanta Falcons. I am at Right Step ADV on X. RSAfootball.com is my website. That is Right Step Advising, where I am helping agents, coaches, players, everybody in the football world navigate everything they need to know, from scouting to evaluation to how teams operate. Neil Stratton along for the ride as always. He is at Inside the League. InsideTheLeague.com is his website. Make sure you check out his blog, SucceedInFootball.com, as well as check out his latest book, Value Picks, up on Amazon, talking all about the NFL draft. Jordan Reid is with us today at Jordan_Reid. REID is where you can find Jordan. But before we jump in, make sure you also go check out the insoles over at BlueMaka.com, BLUMAKA.com. Use code SCOUTING20 to get 20% off your pair of insoles. Improve your performance just by sliding some insoles into those shoes, whether it is for turf toe, for support, for plantar fasciitis, whether it's just for comfort and recovery. Blue Maka has you covered. Head back, listen to our archives with Stuart Jenkins, Chief Innovation Officer over at Blue Maka. Really fun story, really fun podcast. Then order those insoles using code SCOUTING20. But back to the topic today, the 2025 NFL Draft with Jordan Reid. Well, really excited for today's guest. He is the man that brings, probably the best draft analysis over at ESPN. Friend of the program, Jordan Reid. Welcome back to Scouting the League.
It's a pleasure being here. I love joining you guys ever so often. It feels like we were doing this 365 days ago, and here we are once again. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we were just talking about it off air. Again, 3 games this weekend. Biggest thing, we have fresh 2025 tape. Again, right. Guys that go through the draft process and guys that go through the scouting process. I mean, you get to this point in the year and you have watched so much 2024. You've watched 2024 film for the 2025 draft, and then you've been watching 2024 film getting ready for this fall season. And it's like, man, you finally get that fresh tape. Real games, fall games. It's really nice. Again, you're waiting for them to get dropped in. You're checking whatever platform you're watching every couple of minutes. Oh, maybe they dropped the game in those week 0 games. But again, it's really nice to be in it. You saw a couple games right in your backyard here this last weekend. Some really big games. Saw a number of top 20 matchups. Some really good ones. Texas, Ohio State. That LSU Clemson was a really good one. Unfortunately, we saw Coach Belichick kind of get run out of the building in his preview. What stood out for you? College football's back. What stood out for you week 0, week 1 of the college football season?
Well, it's just good to see fresh film, like you said. And, I'm a little bit different from a lot of media scouts or analysts because I actually go on the road in the fall. I get to see a lot of scouting buddies throughout the league. And, there's nothing like being out and basically on the road to unwrapping those new gifts for Christmas, what I like to call it. We don't know which ones we're going to get under our Christmas tree or what's going to be available, but you can still do your homework and hope and wish and get some of these guys in the end. So I love being out on the road. I love seeing my colleagues, catching up with each other, and checking on everybody's family. That's something I really enjoy. But of course, we're there to scout the players, and that's the funnest part: getting to see these guys actually in person, getting to see their mannerisms, how they respond to adversity, how do they respond when something positive happens. These are all things that I'm looking for when I'm out scouting these players.
Jordan, do you ever see any other draft people when you go on the road like that?
I don't, honestly, which is really surprising to me. And I'm a huge film watcher, but I actually started at my first year at ESPN going out on the road, just because a lot of scouts used to say, "Man, you got to get on the road, establish some contacts, establish some resources, and then also see these players as well." And a great comparison that a scouting buddy shared with me is scouting is kind of like buying a car, right? You can look at it online all you want to, but you don't really get a feel for it until you test drive it and you see it in person. That's what live scouting really is to me. And 5 years in now with ESPN, I really enjoy the live scouting portion of everything, just because you're seeing these guys up close, you're getting to experience the atmosphere that they're in. And I had a chance to go to a great one this weekend with Clemson LSU, just being in the middle of that atmosphere, and two quarterbacks that we're going to be talking about a lot throughout the fall. So really enjoy that portion of the fall.
Yeah.
Jordan, you saw some great quarterbacks there, and I don't want to cut Rodrik off, but you were in person there. Did you see anything not between the lines that was memorable to you from either Klubnik or from Nussmeier?
That's a great question. As a former quarterback, and it may seem kind of ticky-tacky, but I really pay attention to the warm-ups of guys. Like, how hard are they going in warm-ups? Are they more laid back? Are they more relaxed? Or do they go extremely hard? What is their pace like? How long is their preparation process in the warm-up portion of it? And I thought both guys passed the test with flying colors. And, you see guys standing around them, taking a bunch of notes. There's tons of scouts around them. Even if your team doesn't need a quarterback, they're just taking notes and jotting down notes on all these guys. So that's the fun part of the process. But I thought both of them pregame passed the test with flying colors. And I love seeing quarterbacks that, orchestrate warmups. They're getting guys, telling them what route to do. If they didn't like the route depth of something, they're telling them to rerun the route, just because little things like that matter. You want to see them be a pro in warmups, just because that's what we're projecting them as. And that's what you want to see with them in warmups. And, Nussmeier, I thought he was great in the warmup portion. And then Klubnik, he stayed for an extended period of warm-up time as well. So I thought both passed the test with flying colors.
Yeah, Jordan, we actually went back and forth, on X talking about some of that stuff for quarterbacks. And quarterbacks is the one position I had multiple mentors tell me, you've got to, if you're going to put a draftable grade on a quarterback, you have to see them live at least one time. And again, the warm-ups, you talked about that. And I remember Desmond Ridder, when I was evaluating Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, 3-hour game or 3-hour scrimmage and then a game, and never once heard his voice. And for me, it was that piece, the way his sideline mannerism was, how he was during that 3-hour live practice. Like I said, I can't put more than a backup grade on this guy based on his interactions on the sideline. And again, you don't get that. You can watch all the film you ever want. You can watch TV copy. You can watch all 22. You don't get that for quarterbacks, and it's so important. How are you with your O-line? How are you with the OC, with your head coach, situationally? Handling all that stuff is so important. We saw it multiple games this week, and we saw it out in CU. We saw it when different spots where situational football, your quarterback has to be in charge. Anything pop up for those guys in person where it's like, man, this guy is that dude on the sideline that's going to take over.
I was blown away by Garrett Nussmeier. Honestly, guys, just stepping into that situation at Clemson, the quote unquote real Death Valley. LSU really took that to heart, just because obviously they feel like they're the real Death Valley as well. And you can tell as soon as he stepped on the field, he had a different confidence and swagger about himself. And if you've never been to Clemson, where the quarterbacks warm up specifically for LSU, it was right beside the student section. So the fans are just hounding him before the game. There's chanting overrated. There's so many different chants that they had, but he remained poised. He remained focused. He was orchestrating his guys to different spots. And then that carried over into the game. I thought he started a little bit slow, but he really settled in after the second quarter, in my opinion. And he just started throwing darts everywhere, the anticipation that he plays with. And he plays like the son of a coach. Obviously, he's the son of Doug Nussmeier, of the New Orleans Saints. And just his football IQ, his ability to battle through adversity, and then just to get a big road win like that, it says a lot about his football character and how he's able to battle back through some adversity. And that's what you want from a quarterback.
Yeah. So
But
again, we
before
get
we
our.
go, Roderick, I don't run over you one more time, but I have to. Was that a catch or not, Jordan?
I think it
Come
was.
on, Roderick.
It wasn't.
I'm getting off here. I mean, what is this catch anymore? Tell me.
We don't
Tell me
know.
catches.
We
I mean,
don't know. Nobody knows.
Ridiculous. I don't know. Sorry.
That's again.
I
Staying.
should have gone down that road.
You're a Louisiana guy. You know, we'll,
No bias
you're
attached.
fine. So
right,
we
go
talked
ahead.
about our overreactions. You don't judge anybody off one game. Big games matter. You want to see these guys perform. You want to see these guys do certain things in big games, respond in certain ways. Again, for Nuss, he was able to get it done. He was able to do enough on offense. It wasn't always pretty. He did it with his legs a few times. He made some big time throws. Again, whether it was a touchdown or not, he still brought his offense back and put him in a position to win the game. On the other side, Cade Klubnik did a lot of good things, kept falling into the same trap that LSU played, running a stunt, force him out of the pocket. Arch Manning's a conversation guy. Some of these guys that, struggled, did things well. Lenora Sellers, we're talking about him. From week 1 to the end of the year now. Again, we've seen 2024 to 2025. You want to make some progression. Now from week 1 to the end of the year, what are some things for either these specific quarterbacks or maybe just quarterback position in general are you wanting to see from week 1 to week 12, 13 playoffs that's going to continue to elevate them and separate quarterback 1, 2, 3 from guys that aren't going to be ultimately first-round quarterbacks?
Well, it's just consistently consistent, what I like to call it, and then also just growth throughout the season. And I think a great example for me, who I had a chance to see this weekend as well, is Lenore Sellers. I think he has every tool imaginable to be a special player in the NFL, but he's just not there right now as a passer. And we saw that consistently throughout the Virginia Tech game. But the one area where he is special and he's better than any quarterback in this year's draft class is his ability to be a dynamic dual threat quarterback. We saw that in the very first series of the game. He's a math changer as a runner, and that's something that is required for me in today's day and age with quarterbacks. You long gone to me are the days of those stationary pocket passes that just strictly win with their minds. Now you have to have not necessarily Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, but you want to have a guy that can have some type of mobility. But he's like a Ferrari, man. Like just seeing it up close, he has so much horsepower. And I can see a team taking a chance on him if he does end up coming out, but he still is very raw as a passer, but he has the most upside of any quarterback in this year's draft class, in my opinion. So you're making a long-term bet with him. Right now, is he the best quarterback? No, I would give that to Garrett Nussmeier just because of how polished he is. But long-term, when we look at this class, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, if they have a proper plan for him, which is patience, I think Lenore Sellers has a sky-high ceiling.
Is it fair for people to be calling him a potential top 5 pick, given that we're talking about a redshirt sophomore who is, that's really fast. And obviously my argument is that Arch Manning was pressing. I think he was a different quarterback in the second half from what he was in the first half. There's an enormous amount of pressure as a Saints guy. All I ever hear is, tank for Arch and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The expectation level, is it fair? I guess that's an immaterial question, but how does it impact these guys, I guess, and how do you even weigh for that?
Well, it impacts it a lot, honestly, Neil. It's kind of like you haven't seen a movie yet, and everybody's telling you how good this movie is, and then you go see the movie and you're underwhelmed by it. That's kind of what happened with Arch Manning, honestly, and it's unfair to him just because he didn't put those expectations on himself. I think he's done the right thing with the way he's answered the questions and answered the hype or the expectations. But he just didn't play well. It's as simple as that. He didn't play well, but we have to remember he's only making his 3rd career start. And yes, I know he has the Manning last name, and I think that's what led to a lot of the hype and the expectations. But it was a hostile environment that he went in. He went into the shoe against Matt Patricia, a new defensive coordinator in college that nobody has tape on, which is another disadvantage that he went in there with. And then also, this isn't Louisiana Monroe, and this is not Mississippi State, who he made his other 2 starts against a season ago. This was Ohio State, who I think has a chance to be the best defense in the country. So I think he's going to get better. That's probably one of the better teams that is one of the best teams he's going to play this season. So let's see if the game does end up slowing down for him. But we just have to temper our expectations and just kind of chill out with the hype a lot with these quarterbacks, no matter who they are.
Yeah, it was. It was really interesting watching that game. Again, the hype. You've got two young quarterbacks, both teams that, regardless of how Week 1 went, you're talking playoff expectations. Still, Texas is still fully in that conversation, and so it was much more of a conservative game plan. You didn't see him doing a lot. Really, the difference I thought was Ohio State's offensive line kind of took control and controlled the field, which again really helped Julian make a few throws. Again, if you want to argue outplay Arch, you compare that game with the way that Notre Dame came out, arguably the best running back. They have a young quarterback, and it was like, hey, yeah, let's open up the playbook again. Week 1 doesn't matter. We're going to do what we can against Miami, but they ran and threw everything out there. And it was just, again, from a really conservative game plan to a wide open game plan, really, really big differences in the way you watch those games in young quarterbacks. And then on the other side of that game was a quarterback who maybe has resurrected his career back down in Miami and played pretty well. Maybe not back up into that QB1 conversation yet, but hey, this is the Carson Beck that we thought was at Georgia. Talk about his performance. Have you had a chance to look at him, and what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, he's one that I was really curious about going into the year, and the Miami offense in general, just because if you think about it, he's the complete inverse from Cam Ward as a quarterback. So what I wanted to see was how would they tailor make this offense to Carson Beck, and I thought they did a heck of a job with that. You know, he's your prototypical under center or shotgun true drop back passer that needs the great surroundings around him, which I think Miami does have better surroundings from a receiver standpoint, and I thought the offensive line played really well as well. Whenever you have a quarterback that isn't overly mobile, you have to have that infrastructure in place that really helps him and really uplifts him as well. And I thought Miami did a heck of a job with that. We saw the catch that CJ Daniels was able to make. So those things have to happen for you to maximize Carson Beck. But just from him, from a performance standpoint, I thought he played really well for the most part. I thought he was really decisive in the pocket. I thought he was accurate for the most part. And then he's a rhythmic thrower. So you can tell how Carson is going to play throughout a game, how he plays in the first quarter. And that's exactly how it was at Georgia last season. I thought he got off to a really good start. So as long as he's in a rhythm early on in the game, you can tell how the game is going to go for him. And the great thing about Miami is that they have a great setup for him just because they're really strong along the offensive line. I thought they dominated Notre Dame in the trenches on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. That's something Coach Cristobal has done a heck of a job with recruiting and bringing in the right players in now to where they can have any type of quarterback back there to where they can protect him. But I would give it a solid B, honestly, for how he played. And if he continues that trend upward, now we're going to have another quarterback in the early round conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Week 1, we saw a bunch of top 25 matchups, a bunch of top 10 matchups. Quarterbacks really, you kind of see what they're made of. Again, whether things go bad, go well. This next week, though, we get a little different. I think we only have one top 25 matchup, but we've got Oklahoma C and Michigan, which means we're going to get to see John Mateer go against a really good Michigan defense. Mateer did what he needed to Week 1. Again, not much competition there. He's been a buzz guy all summer. People really excited about him, really excited about what he's going to do at OU. What are your expectations going into this week against that Michigan defense?
This is the game. Like when Rodrik, you've been there before. Whenever we're looking at that tape of a prospect that we want to see, we want to see him go against the best defenses. This is the tape that every scout is going to cut on for him at the end of the season. So for him, I think he's going to go out there and play well, honestly, just because he has that fearless mentality that I love to see in quarterbacks. And Nuss has that as well. He has that fearless anticipation, like I like to call it. And he can rip it. Like he loves to cut it loose. There's not going to be any sense of hesitancy with him. And I think he's going to welcome being in that environment as well, playing against Michigan. So I'm really curious to see how he does play. But if I had to guess, I don't think he's going to be gun shy at all, just because that's how he is. And I love quarterbacks that play that way.
That's good.
Jordan, I haven't seen Drew Allar play a lot. I saw him a little bit in the playoffs last year, but I haven't studied him. And I'm not a scout anyway. But given his dimensions and given what I've seen of him, he seems like more of a drop back guy. He's not an off-platform guy. He's not a super mobile guy. In today's and in 1985, that's awesome. But in today's game, is he going to be penalized for that on draft day in April?
It honestly just depends on the team, honestly. And both of you guys know that all it takes is one team to fall in love with the quarterback. And this is why I love going out on the road, just because I can sneak in those questions about different guys to scouts. And I mean, it just depends on who you ask. Some guys liked him. There were some that loved him, and there was others that said, I'm out on him. So he's going to be a very polarizing prospect. And you said it, Neil, like he has every tool imaginable just because he's 6'5". He has all the measurables. He's legit 240 pounds, has a really good arm. He's shown growth in the accuracy department as well. But for him, it's just a matter of, are you comfortable with that throwback type of quarterback that has to have great surroundings? He has to have a good offensive line. As you see at Penn State, they have arguably the best rushing attack in all of college football as well. But he's another that still is a little bit unrefined as a passer, even though his completion percentage went from 59% in 2023 to 66% a season ago. He still is a little bit erratic with his accuracy. But as I tell everybody, where he has to improve is big games. We know that he's going to beat up on those small teams, just like what he did against Nevada last week. But how does he play against Michigan? How does he play, against those upper tier teams like that? And I believe they play Oregon, and there's Ohio State is another big game I believe they have this year as well. Those are the two games scouts really only care about with Drew Allen. We know he's going to beat up on those lower tier teams. We know he's going to put up good numbers against them. But how does he play against those upper tier or elite teams? Those are the games that teams really care about with him. And that's why he's such a polarizing prospect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's an interesting one. And again, you look at the numbers aren't going to tell the story for him. He's going to have to be one you really have to look at the game. It was it their first or second playoff game last year? He didn't complete a pass to a wide receiver. That's always going to be an issue. Again, I don't care who your tight end is, who your running backs are. You better complete some passes to wide receivers. So, Drew, he's going to be an interesting study. Penn State, high expectations for that team. Texas Tech went out and paid for a roster. Agree or disagree, they got a good one. And the quarterback out there is pretty interesting too. Baron Morton. Have you done much work on Baron? He's kind of popping off, getting more notoriety out in the middle of nowhere in Lubbock, Texas, and with their expectations.
I honestly have not studied him in depth. I've watched him from afar, just watching some of their plays on offense. So I honestly can't give an honest assessment on him, but I have heard some great things about him. And like you mentioned, I mean, they have some really good prospects. They have David Bailey, the outside linebacker. A lot of people are really excited about him. He's getting some early round buzz, but the quarterback is one that a lot of people haven't mentioned to me, but I haven't studied him in depth.
Good. Well, we will have to bring you back for Baron Morton because he's got some weapons and they've got some expectations there in Lubbock, which is going to be fun.
Jordan, in the last 10 years, we've seen guys like Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield who went into their last season as solid day threes and maybe not even day threes. All right. I'm putting you on the spot here, but are there any players that fit that profile that could really rise up, not necessarily be number one overall, but certainly get into that day one conversation? And if there are, does he play in Nashville right now?
He does not play in Nashville. We
got him on record, Rodrik.
So there is one. He's not a day three prospect, but there's a lot of excitement and his buzz is pretty significant now. But it's Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback of Indiana. There's still some question marks about him as far as how he's going to play in the Big Ten this year. We'll see how he does end up doing. They have some big games coming up in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So we'll see how he does coming over from Cal. But if you're just looking at the traits, I definitely think he has first round worthy traits. Even though the stats weren't eye popping with him last year, you can just go back and watch that Auburn game of how he battled and battled and battled. But I think he's the toughest quarterback in this year's draft class. Like the offensive line at Cal was brutal. But we talked about battling back from adversity with Nussmeier a little bit earlier. His ability to battle through adversity, make those tough throws from the pocket, and constantly come back and challenge defenses. That's something that you just consistently write about with him. So obviously the surroundings are going to be better at Indiana than what it was at Cal. So how does he adjust now being there? And we've seen how Kirk Cignetti has been able to develop quarterbacks there. Curtis Rourke ended up being a draft pick, and I think Fernando Mendoza is much more talented from a trait standpoint than what Rourke was. So I'm really interested to see how he does end up playing this year. And it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up going in the first or even the second round. That would not be surprising if he plays up to his level.
Okay, so I'm admitting that I am a Diego Pavia truther. What's your take on him? We talked about it a little bit before we got started. What's your take on him? Like him? Don't like him? What's his ceiling?
I don't know if you guys have seen the SEC documentary on Netflix.
I haven't seen it yet.
I think every scout is going to fall in love with him after they watch that, just because his competitive nature. He has what I like to call small man syndrome. So every short man feels like they're 6'8", 300 pounds, and they feel like they can run over everybody. That's what Diego Pavia is. You just love the competitive fire with him, and not to spoil it. What I love that he said in the documentary, somebody asked who was his favorite sports team, and he says the New York Yankees, and somebody asked him why, and he says it's because they win, and I'm a freaking winner, to say the G-rated version of it. So I love that quote from him. But I think somebody could fall in love with him and take him somewhere late day 3. But if he doesn't get drafted, there's going to be a lot of teams scrambling to call him and try to sign him as a UFA.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy you want on your team, and again was I would say for me a bit of a surprise top 300 player for Drew and the Senior Bowl crew, and again is going to have a chance to get down there again, pull an upset perhaps, and keep Coach Lee's program kind of rolling. Are there any other quarterbacks like, hey, we haven't talked about this guy? This guy's maybe a little under the radar. Anybody that you're really excited maybe gets into that first round conversation?
No, we really touched on all of them, honestly. I would mention Sam Levitt at Arizona State.
Yep.
He's still a little bit young. He's only had 13 or 14 starts to his career, but I definitely think he has some very intriguing traits as well. He made a big leap after coming over from Michigan State, but once again, in that Lenore Sellers tier of where they're still in the teens as far as the number of career starts that they have. So very limited sample size.
Yeah, but took that team to the playoff, had them right on the cusp of pulling the upset against Texas, and it's kind of a nice segue into the next group of wide receivers. And Levitt has one there in Arizona State, but who is wide receiver 1 in this class? We have to wait another year for Jeremiah Smith. His teammate Carnell Tate made a really nice catch, maybe wants to get in that conversation for first round wide receivers. South Carolina's got a guy. Arizona State's got a guy. Of course, I think it was Ryan Williams has to wait. And Alabama, again, who's going to rise to the top of this wide receiver class as we see more and more wide receivers getting drafted in the first round?
Yeah, it's a really interesting class, honestly, guys. I don't think we have that bona fide, top 15 pick like we've seen multiple times in years past. There's no Ted McMillan that's going to go top 10 in this class. I think this group is going to be more along that DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel type of class, where we see a lot of guys go from that 20 to 40 range, if I had to guess right now. But Jordan Tyson would be that guy for me as far as the number one receiver off of the board. I think he's very polished as a route runner, really strong in his route stems. That's something that really stands out about him. Does need to get more consistent as a catcher, in my opinion, and then needs to stay healthy. Durability is a big problem with him going through his year of season ago. He just has to stay healthy. Obviously, he didn't play in the playoff last year, and he missed the Texas game as well. So he just has to stay healthy. Durability is a big thing for him that could come up at the combine just from a medical standpoint. So he has to clean that up a little bit. But after that, it's really a toss-up. You put a bunch of names in a hat and just pick one right now to see if somebody emerged. I like the USC guys, Mekhi Lemon and then also Jacoby Lane. I'm a big fan of both of them. I think both of them are going to emerge as the season goes along. We saw Carnell Tate of Ohio State make a big catch against Texas this past weekend as well. And then you're getting into some other guys, just looking at my list. Eric Singleton Jr. of Auburn coming over from Georgia Tech, a short, shifty slot receiver that's really dynamic. Chris Bell from Louisville has a lot of fans, but still needs some more polish, and he's a bit unproven right now. So there's a lot of hoping and wishing and a lot of if, ands, or buts right now with the receiver class, but I'm really interested to see who emerges outside of Tyson.
Yeah, again, that you could pick any one of those four guys down at LSU. Again,
Yep.
somebody's going to put up numbers every week, and again, we've kind of seen that with LSU. Is like they're not going to just have one or two; they might have three or four. Again, you mentioned those guys, and again, Malachi Fields at Notre Dame, and then again his teammate. That I'm going to draw a blank. Number 6 looked really good this last week. Had some
Yeah,
good
Faison
plays.
look good.
Again, you just kind of it's a fun group early in the year where there's a bunch of guys that could kind of elevate their team. Who makes the highlight catch? Who catches that buzz? And then again, it always goes back. It helps to have a quarterback. Helps to have a guy that's throwing it down the field and opening up the offense and doing all those good things. So it's gonna be a fun wide receiver class to see where it all shakes out. Because again, it's not last year it seemed like the debate was really about 3 guys who rises out of those 3 guys, and this year it's about 10, 15 guys could go in that group, which is a lot of fun. Staying on the offensive side for just a little bit longer. Again, Jeremiah Love came out, had a little bit of a disappointing opening night. Again, whether that was what the game plan was, whether it was, hey, we know they're going to try to stop him, let's try to open it up. Running backs, tight ends, who are guys that are going to kind of raise themselves up, be a surprise top 10. Who's our Ashton Jantty? Who's our top tight end? Where are we going offensive weapon wise?
Honestly, the running back class does not look great right now outside of Jeremiah Love. Coming off of last year where I believe we got 28 running backs drafted, I don't think that number is going to be as high this year, and there's not as much top of the line talent like we saw last year with Ashton Jantty. Omarion Hampton was another guy that went in the first round as well. Jeremiah Love will be the only running back that I would be comfortable taking in the first round right now just because of how dynamic he is. Then after that, I mean, you have Nick Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State, who's that dynamic duo. CJ Baxter at Texas, who had some moments against Ohio State. Damon Claiborne of Wake Forest, who is somebody I'm a big fan of, but unfortunately got banged up when I went to go see him the other day on the very first series of the game. And then you're just getting into some later round guys potentially. Jonah Coleman at Washington is a guy that had a really good game last week. But once again, there's not a lot of top of the line talent in this year's class. Very similar to the receiver class. Some guys need to emerge and some guys need to break out as well.
So we can get back to the no running backs drafted in the first round conversation. Jeremiah, again, we'd all be surprised at this point if he's not the one guy that ends up in that first round, but it may be thin after that. Any top 15, top 10 tight ends in this group?
I think there's one. He still has a lot to prove, but he looked really good on tape last week. It's Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon. He really waited his turn. He played behind Terrence Ferguson last year, who ended up being a mid-round pick, was a really good player for them. But now it's his opportunity to shine. He's more of the undersized tight end at about 6'3", 235 to 240 pounds. But he's so explosive. He's really good after the catch. But what's really unique about him is that he's a dog as a blocker. That's something that you always worry about with those undersized tight ends. But, man, he's so chippy and he's so competitive. If you're going to be an undersized guy, as long as you play with that chip on your shoulder and you give that effort as a blocker, I think that's something that could take him over the top to get in that top 15 threshold. But once again, he's very unproven right now. But if he plays how he played this past weekend, man, I think he's going to end up being a top 15 pick. I think Kenyon Sadiq is a dude. He's really, really good.
So you think he's a classic Y, Jordan, even at 6'3", 235?
I don't. I think he's more so a F, honestly.
But he can block.
Yeah, I mean he can block. Yeah, he's like a legit blocker. He's not a guy that I call that just camouflages, that kind of just stands in the way, just runs his feet. No, he's actually trying to put people in the dirt. He's standing up with 6 techniques, 7 techniques, 9 techniques. He's doing all that stuff with single blocks, which is something that's very rare for a tight end of that size. Now, I was talking to a scout, and I think it might have just been some fluff a little bit with him, but he said that he reminds him of Vernon Davis. Now, that's a bit lofty just because Vernon ran in the 4.3s, the high 4.3s. And I think Kenyon's going to run really fast as well. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up running in the low 4.4s. But, guys, I don't know if you studied him or not, but he's a dude. He's really, really good. He just needs to prove himself in those bigger games now, which you will have a chance to. And then as a starter, being the guy now, if he does end up popping the way I think he can, I think he can enter that top 15 discussion.
Interesting.
Yeah, again, those undersized guys that have the want to, you always hope they have the ability to stay on the field and do it too. Again, at 235, you bang around in there and want to get out and run some routes. It takes a toll. Again, it's a reason why you like those guys in line to be about 250. But it'll be really interesting as they play through their schedule to make sure he maintains that explosiveness, the speed, and you hope he doesn't back off too much. Again, maybe that's on the offensive coordinator to scheme it up a little bit, give him some chance to showcase it, but still do what he does best. Well, we don't have to bore people with the offensive line stuff. I know Neil and I could go all day with offensive line. You win in the tension.
Absolutely.
Let's kick it over. Defensive players, edge rushers, impact guys on the other side of the ball. Who are some of those really exciting defensive players? Again, starting with the rushers that you saw pop up this last week.
Well, the player I came away the most impressed with of anybody on either side of the ball was Ruben Bain Jr. out of Miami. He's that classic tweener that can play inside. Miami primarily plays him outside, but he has rare power. And the way he was just manhandling Notre Dame's offensive tackles, like it was child's play. He was shocking and shedding, getting rid of those guys. He was disrupting the passer. He even had an interception as well, which was awesome for him just because just watching it on tape, he actually hustled to the ball, and it was a tip drill. And you guys watched the game. You saw him catch the ball. He wasn't even in the picture, but the way he was pursuing to the ball, coaches always say good things happen when you pursue the football. He pursued the football, which is the effort that you want to see, and he ended up getting the interception. But I thought he showed everything that he needed to, especially coming off an injury-riddled season. A season ago in 2024, there was a lot of question marks about him coming in. And, those question marks are still there just because he needs to prove it over the length of a season. But you couldn't have asked for a better start for Ruben Bain. So I think he could be a guy that does end up going top 15 or top 20 or even higher just because he's so pro-ready right now, just because of his strength and his size at 6'3", 275. It's just a matter of, and this is going to be the bit of a polarizing thing about him, where exactly do you play him? And a lot of teams are kind of skeptical of taking those tweeners just because they do flame out, just because if you don't find a clear defined position for them, they get a bit confused and they get a bit lost in the shuffle. So the big thing for Bain is, of course, have a plan just like any other prospect. But I think you have to solidify a position for him and then try to mix and match where you do play him. And I think Miami does a really good job of that. So he was one that really stood out. But this is a really good edge class. Honestly, I got a chance to see TJ Parker of Clemson up close. I thought he was really good in the run game. I wanted to see him flash a little bit more in the passing game. I was a little bit underwhelmed with him as a pass rusher just coming out of that game. I thought he could have affected the game a little bit more and flashed a little bit more, especially when Nuss started to settle in, specifically in the second half. I wanted to see him show up a little bit more, but I thought he flashed quite a bit as a run defender. Then after that, you have guys like Denai Dennis Sutton at Penn State, Mateo Uiagalelei, who was the younger brother of DJ out at Oregon, LT Overton at Alabama, who was another tweener, a bit like Ruben Bain. David Bailey, we talked about a little bit earlier at Texas Tech. So this is a really, really good edge class. It's very deep.
Good. As you start looking at this group, again, you kind of hit on it with those tweeners, and we see so many of them at the college level where you can be a little light. You're going to play a little bit more in space, kick them out to the overhang, be a little more flexible with them, which means we're seeing some of those true edges, those true 3-4 outside linebackers almost roll at about 240. When you're scouting these guys, again, I've heard about every side of the argument, like, oh, developmentally it's going to slow him down. I've heard the other side of it where, hey, we want to see him play in space and see what kind of athlete he is. We know what kind of rusher he is because you're going to be able to hone in on those tapes. As you're scouting these guys, Jordan, what are you really wanting to see? A nice, complete, full profile, or would you love to see a guy just line up as a 7-tech and rush the passer to know exactly what he is in the NFL?
It's kind of like the combine, honestly, Rodrik. And like I said, you've been in this draft room. You've been through the process a lot. I really just want to confirm what I saw on tape, but also if I have question marks, I want to see if those question marks are confirmed or denied as well. So, for example, a guy like TJ Parker, who I saw this past weekend at Clemson, I think he's I would say a little slightly above average athlete. So how does he bend in warmups when he's going through them? What is his ankle flexion like? Little things like that are the notes that I'm jotting down just because maybe he had an ankle injury or something in the game that I watched, and that's why he wasn't able to bend. But now that I'm seeing him in person, he's fully healthy now, and maybe his bend may be a little bit better. So those are the little things that I'm looking for. Ankle flexion, How does he bend? What is his hand pop like when he's popping the bags in warm-ups? What is his hand maturity and activity like when he's going through warm-ups and things like that as well? So these are the little small details that I'm looking for when those guys are going through warm-ups. And then how does it translate to the game as well? And I thought a great example of this past weekend, a player I had a lot of question marks about was Harold Perkins Jr. of LSU. I thought he looked so much more comfortable at that star position. And you guys watched the game on TV. They played him at that star position where he's basically just an overhang, and they just allowed him to play forward. Just blitz him, try to rush the passer, and then limit his snaps and coverage, but just allow him to be aggressive just because he's better when he's playing forward, not playing backwards when he has to drop in coverage. But which makes his eval very tricky in the NFL. But we're seeing a lot of things that he does well on the collegiate level just because he's an unreal athlete. Like, you guys saw the last play of the game when he flushed Klubnik out of the pocket. His closing speed up close is absolutely phenomenal. So he's another where his position on the next level is going to be a little bit tricky just because he's likely going to have to play, safety. I don't think he's going to be heavy enough to play linebacker. So how early do you take that? But if we're just strictly talking about the athlete and how he can contribute to a defense, we know he's going to be able to do that just because of the athleticism that he has. And I didn't even mention this was his first game back from a torn ACL. So he's fully recovered from that. But there's going to be a bit of a polarizing opinions about him as far as exactly where he goes and where you play him.
It's criminal what LSU did to him last year, moving him inside. But we won't go down that path either. Do you see him as a box safety, Jordan? I mean, is that fair to say? And if so, is he the kind of guy that can cover the slot and cover a tight end?
I think he can. You just have to do it sparingly, honestly, Neil. And that's exactly what they did for him against Clemson. And if you notice, every play that he made, he either was blitzing or he was moving forward.
Absolutely.
So the tricky part for him is you can't move him forward on every play. So where exactly do you play him when he's not moving forward on certain plays? And that's why I think that rover star position is best for him, just because they allowed him to play zone, use his spatial awareness, and then use that athleticism as well. But when he wasn't playing out in space, they were blitzing him off of the edge or blitzing him up the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Listed at 222. You might have a verified on him. The Atlanta Falcons drafted an LSU linebacker who was happy if he got up to about 210, made a lot of plays. Again, the career ended a little bit earlier. Again, was arguably the best run and hit linebacker for about 2 years, right in the middle of his career. And Deion Jones, I mean, the dude could outrun anybody. He was athletic, but again, guys like that, schematically a little bit limited, a little bit narrow, again, limited what you ask him to do, but can be impactful players, which again,
I'll give you another example too. You guys remember Telvin Smith? He had a really good run early on, undersized, a bit skinny, but just the athleticism and the physicality that he played with. He had a really good run in the early parts of his career.
Yeah. And again, that part of the conversation becomes very philosophical for teams. Like, hey, there's teams I've heard, like, if we get this guy to the end of his first contract, we pay him his fifth year, like, that's a successful draft pick.
Absolutely.
If he's a 5-year starter for us, there's other teams where, hey, if he doesn't sign a second contract for us, I don't know if we can take this player. I don't know if we can take him here with a first or second round pick, which is, again, probably that second round window is probably where you want to talk about it. That was Deion. That's probably going to be a player like Harold Perkins. So again, philosophically, there's going to be a team that will take him, take a chance, again, if he makes it to a 6th year, 7th year. But again, when you start talking about your outliers size-wise, that's usually where it catches up to them. And again, where you really get some varied opinions on teams, which is, again, all part of the fun of the draft is getting to know GMs, getting to know teams, head coaches, what's their philosophy, how do they want to do it from a pro scouting perspective? Again, that's where the fun at the draft comes in here, trying to project some of these things and where they may actually go. So again, you must have been, had eyes on my other screen over here, because Harold Perkins was the guy I was going to ask you about next, which is a good one. Staying on that Clemson game, though, they've got some bigs. Again, Dabo's always got the D-line. He's had them just about every year. He rolls through those guys. Peter Woods has been a guy that a lot of love, a lot of early love, disruptive, big. Talk about him specifically, that defensive line, and then who are the other bigs that you're really excited about?
Yeah, Peter Woods, who was the top player on my draft board entering the year, and man, you see that dude up close. If you went to a game with somebody that doesn't know anybody about Clemson, they're going to be asking who the heck is number 11 just because he looks the part. Every bit of 6'3", 310 pounds. There isn't an ounce of fat on his body. Like I could have went up and pinched him and barely got any skin from any part of his frame. He just looks the part, really explosive, really disruptive, really good hands. I love the business-like mentality that he had in warm-ups. You know, he's breaking it down. He's calling it up with the defensive line group, just being a leader, which is little things that I love to see at the position just because he's taking the onus of being the leader of that group now that he is the guy along that defensive front. So I wanted to see him flash a little bit more during the game, honestly. I thought he had some plays sparingly, but whenever you're a bona fide top 10 guy to me going into the year, I like to see you flash, undoubtedly, in big games like that. And I didn't think he flashed enough in that game. Not to say that he was bad. I don't think he was bad by any stretch of the imagination. I just wanted to see him flash a little bit more in the game than what he did. So I still think he's going to end up being a top 10 pick. He's going to end up having a really good year. But Peter Woods is one guy that I was really I'm really excited about. And then just some others, just looking at my list. Keldrick Falk of Auburn. I thought he had a really good game the other night against Baylor. More so kind of like Mykel Williams. He's never going to be that double-digit sack guy, in my honest opinion, but 6'6", 280 pounds. He has the length. He's a NFL-ready run defender right away. Really strong. Understands how to shock and shed. Really good run defender already as well. And you saw that in the Baylor tape. Is littered throughout that game. Caleb Banks of Florida is another. That's that big prototype. Is 6'6", 310, 315 pounds. The big thing with him is just consistency. There's a lot of games that he flashed throughout the season. Then there's others where he just completely disappears. So he needs to find that fine line of consistency as well. And then some others, that I'm really excited about. Kristen Miller of Georgia. He's another I thought played really well against Marshall. But, of course, that's not going to be one of the games that we cut on when we're looking at him at the end of the year. So when they get into those deeper SEC teams, that tape is really going to matter for him. He's another that has fantastic size as well, but just is unproven.
Yeah.
Jordan, we're seeing now more often, because this is one of the things I look at, we're in the age of the one-and-done head coach. I think every year for the last 5 years, there's been at least one head coach that made it 1 year and was fired. Okay? Given that, do you think that teams are looking for a higher floor or a higher ceiling, given that they may not be around to see that ceiling? I mean, is Peter Woods going to be penalized because, boy, this guy could be really something else, but it may take a few years for him to get there? I mean, what's your take on that?
It honestly just depends on the organization. Honestly, there's some teams that love to go for the home run swing, especially if they feel confident about a player in the early rounds. But there's some teams that they just take really good football players. And I think the Eagles and the Ravens are prime examples of that. They don't really care about positional value or anything like that. We're just going to take the best football players. And that's why they always have the most loaded rosters. And, like I said, it just really depends on the team. But if I were running the team, I would take more so of the Ravens and the Eagles' philosophy of just taking players that are high on my board. But we have to take into account job security and the timeline of teams. There's some teams that aren't willing to take some of these other players that may have a high ceiling just because they need that high floor player, just because they have to hit on this draft pick, or they're not going to be there next year. While there's some other teams that may have a longer timeline or a shorter timeline, which really that really varies as far as who they can take, whether they can take that home run swing of certain prospects. So it really just depends on the job security of the team, and then also just how long of a leash that head coach or that GM may have.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neil, you hit on that in your Friday wrap last week. It is a chicken or egg question of, hey, can we draft some developmental guys and have a little runway, or do you get behind the 8 ball and you're redoing everything? Because again, that's the tough part with, again, your first round picks, Jordan. You typically end up like, these guys are multi-scheme fits for the most part. They're plug them, play them. It doesn't matter where they're at. They're going to be good players. You get beyond that first round, and most of these guys have some scheme limitations where they need to be with the right coach, the right program, the right defense. And when that changes every 2 to 3 years, I mean, that is what really kills guys, kills teams. Again, Eagles and Ravens, even when you've had some head coach change, more specifically in Philly, a lot of pieces around it stayed the same. Front office, philosophy, And so again, you see the long success of it, but again, how do you get there? That's what everybody's trying to figure out. Well, I have a quarterback that starts, that
Yeah.
helps, right? But again, how do you find those pieces? Maybe this is the year to find that quarterback somewhere throughout the first round, because again, there are a number of good ones. Again, if the three of us could get on and convince 32 owners to be a little more patient, hey, we'd probably all jump at the opportunity to do that. It'd be good for football, but I don't think we're gonna get the ear of any of that ownership group. So we'll just keep doing what we do and talk about these guys as we finish up here. Jordan, got to get back into the secondary. Some good players again. Whether it's staying in Clemson, of course Georgia has dudes. That Texas secondary. Man, they got a bunch of guys on the back end. Who are some of these guys in the secondary that you like? Corner, safety, nickels that you think will make an impact this year?
Well, it all starts with Caleb Downs, the safety at Ohio State. And it's very rare to see safeties go inside the top 5 or the top 10. We haven't seen that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Jamal Adams was the last one to go inside of the top 5. So it was very rare to see that. But Downs, he's a special player. Like he changes everything on a team's defense. And he's not one of those guys that plays like a bunch of roles in the secondary. Honestly, he kind of just floats over the middle of the field and really just cancels everything out. And that's what he was able to do against Texas. He's done it in a bunch of other games as well. But the thing that stands out the most about him is that he's been an All-American at 2 very premier programs. He did it as a freshman at Alabama, and he did it as a sophomore at Ohio State, 2 of the better programs historically throughout the country. So that just goes to show you how good he has played. The football character is outstanding. He's the younger brother of Josh Downs, the receiver for the Colts. So the football character from the people that I have talked to is outstanding as well. He's one of those players when we talk about, is going to be able to come in and contribute right away. We know as soon as you turn in the car with his name on draft night, he's going to be penciled in as a starter for somebody, wherever he goes. So he's going to be able to play right away. After that, I think this corner class is really interesting. Jermod McCoy of Tennessee is one that is very popular among scouts, but he did suffer a torn ACL in January. He has been running around a little bit at practice doing some individual. Based on what I heard, I don't think he's going to be back until sometime in October. Based on what I heard this past weekend, don't know exactly when in October, but that's kind of like the projected range of where he's going to return, depending on how Tennessee's season goes, which is another can of worms, especially if things come off the rails there. Does he come back or does he just end up declaring for the draft or how that goes? But we'll worry about that when the time comes. But he is the top corner on the board for a lot of scouts and a lot of teams, including myself. Then after that, you have Avion Terrell at Clemson, who I thought had a really good game. Outside of the one touchdown he gave up to the big 6'7" tight end of LSU, which is tough for a 5'10" corner. But prior to that moment, I thought he played really well. He's the younger brother of A.J. Terrell out in Atlanta, somebody you've had experience with, Rodrik, who ended up being a really good player in Atlanta. One corner I thought played really, really well, I was blown away by, was Mansour Delane of LSU, who came over from Virginia Tech. And, he shut everything down for Clemson. He was exceptional in that game. But he's one that I thought played really, really well this past weekend. A.J. Harris at Penn State is somebody who I'm a big fan of as well. But this is a really interesting cornerback class. And I don't think we're going to get that top 10 guy. There's no Derek Stingley or Sauce Gardner in this class. But if there's a run from I would say, 18 to 35 in that range, I think that's where the run on corners are going to come in this class.
Have you watched Malik Muhammad at all? He's one of my guys that I've been pretty excited about.
I have. I had an opportunity to see him live last year when he was he wasn't eligible for the draft a season ago, but I was really intrigued by him. Now, I think the big thing for him is with them losing so much in the secondary, with Jahdae Barrett and all those guys gone, how does he transition from being a guy in the secondary to being the guy in the secondary? And I haven't studied him against Ohio State this past weekend, but I'm really interested to now go back and focus on him in this game to see how he started off this season. So I think he's one of those guys that we talk about has a really high floor. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. He's one I think could come in and be a starter too.
Yeah. I thought you look at Jeremiah Smith's numbers and you have to look and see, all right, how did those numbers end up where they did? Because not a ton of production. Not that they were trying to throw the ball a ton in that game the way it went, but an exciting player. Jordan, I think that takes us around. We're not going to hit on specialists. So if there's anybody out there that wants to talk kickers, punters, perhaps you have to come back another time and maybe we'll hit on the specialists. Is there anybody like just a player, a guy, a dude that you're excited to see, throughout the year, whether it's live, whether it's against certain competition, maybe one or two players where it's like, hey, this could be the Jordan Reid guy come draft time next year?
I wouldn't say he's my guy, but I did come away with some different takeaways about him, and that's Nick Harbor, the big receiver of South Carolina.
Glad you brought
He's
him
one
up.
that's going to be really, really polarizing. And I keep saying it, Rodrik, you've been to these live scout games plenty of times. He looks like a Greek god in person, man. Like he's every bit of 6'5", 240 pounds. He ran 10-1 in track. I think he ran like 22 in the 200 meters. But what I love the most, just talking to some of the sources in the building, he focused strictly on football this year. He told the track coaches, hey, I'm giving up track. I want to focus on football just because he's a big, raw athlete. But he's one of those guys that is slowly starting to click for him, and that light is slowly starting to turn on just because he's still not an overly great route runner, but it looks much better than what it was a season ago, if that makes sense. So he's one of those guys that I think 2 to 3 years from now, that's really what you're drafting him for, but he just needs reps. If he gets those continued reps, I think he's only going to get better. And we saw it, that deep post route really to ice the game at the end there. He can fly, man. Like just seeing that dude in person, seeing him actually run straight line, I was really impressed. And a play that a lot of people didn't notice, and I wanted to post it on Twitter, you can go look at my Twitter page, he ran down as a gunner on punt and made a tackle, which is something that I definitely wrote down. I absolutely love that just because receivers, especially those guys, if you're the fourth or fifth guy on the depth chart, you have to play special teams. That's something that is a requirement for me. Him having that experience as a gunner, running down on kickoff as well, little things like that, he's going to be able to play in those areas while still being able to gain polish as a receiver. So he's one I definitely wanted to give a shout out to just because I was really, really intrigued by him. It's just a matter of I don't know exactly where he's going to go, but he's going to be a combine warrior, man. Like he's going to jump 40 plus in the vertical. He's probably going to run probably low to mid 4.3s at 6'5", 240 pounds. And we all know teams fall in love with that type of stuff. And even though the tape might not be as good, even though he's a project, there's going to be some team that may convince themselves that he could be a player for them 2 to 3 years down the road.
I know everybody drops passes, but the drop slant on the second pass that Sellers threw, I was like, because you're right. I mean, the tools are there, but I don't know if the hands are there, and I don't know if they can get there. Maybe they can. I don't know. That's why
I did want to share this, and I would love you guys' opinion on this. The scout that I talked to, he made a great point, and he said, long term, the vision is DK Metcalf. Not saying he's going to be that, but that's like the vision for him. And if you remember, everybody said, don't run DK on the short routes, the out routes, the hitches. Run him north and south, and he's made a career out of that. So I thought that was a really interesting point that a scout shared.
If he's DK Metcalf, that's a grand slam home run. But
it's those big raw. Again, DK was like that, and again there were stretches where Julio Jones looked like he had just sufficient level hands. Again, guys that could make the unbelievable freak catch, freak athletic traits, but again, drop the easy ones. And hopefully we see, again, if nothing else, we know Lenora Sellers can throw it out the stadium, and he may be able to catch it out of the stadium because he's got that kind of speed and up. So he's going to be a fun one because, again, at the end of the day, you can't teach size and speed combination like that. You're born with it or you're not. Again, if you start throwing that special teams comp in there, I still go back and we've got the story is kind of written on Chase Claypool now, but that's what he was coming out of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Big, raw, best special teams player in the country, in my opinion. So, going to be fun. We got a lot of college football left to go, though, so it's going to be fun. The overreactions are out there every week. Take guys off your draft board, move them to 2027. Oh, nope, he's back this week. So, again, we'll see where all of it goes. Again, be patient. Have fun with the film. Love watching that fresh film. Jordan, you're at Jordan Reid on X. You're putting stuff out there constantly. Are you traveling? Are you calling any games this week, or are you just traveling scouting?
Nope. So I have twin daughters. They're 6 years old. They're making their cheerleading debut on Saturday.
Awesome.
So taking a week off. On
All
daddy
right.
duty this weekend for that. But the following weekend, I'm at Georgia versus Tennessee. So I'm excited about that one.
Good. That'll be a good one. Again, Christian Walker, another fun player that you mentioned. That'll be a good test for him in that game, because if nothing else, Tennessee's going to see what kind of shape he's in, and force him to do some conditioning. So Jordan, really appreciate it. Always have a lot of fun. Enjoy the competition with the girls this week, and best of luck throughout the season. We'll definitely check back in with you.
Thank you guys as always. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Jordan.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file folder storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.